Hey guys, it's Supersonic Q here, and today I wanted to show off an older set. So when I was originally thinking about doing an in-depth series on this particular set, I actually thought I had more models around than I actually still do. This is the Sonic Heroes set. It's the first clay set that I ever sculpted, and it's years and years old, probably at least 10 years old or so. Naturally, yeah, I don't have as many characters as I thought I did, and I know I keep showing off older stuff rather than newer stuff, but I do think that the older stuff has a certain quality to it, and I like showing it off because it just shows how far I've come as a sculptor. And, you know, these guys are never going to get their limelight, so unless it's an in-depth series episode, you're never going to see them. With that said, let's start the oldest clay set that I ever sculpted, the Sonic Heroes set. So we're going to go by team. First up is Team Rouge, which has no surviving characters. At one point, I did have the entire game, all the teams and stuff, but I just don't know where they are, so that was Team Rouge. So, move on to Team Sonic, which has one remaining survivor, and that's Knuckles. So, yeah, this is a really old Knuckles. I mean, you guys can just tell how old this is, but it's pretty interesting. I mean, I don't know, just to see how I used to sculpt the character. So, like, look at his huge head and his really tiny fists. If anything, Knuckles should have huge fists. All of his dreadlocks broke off, but it looks like he only had maybe 2 or so that's kind of weird. And his shoes have no detail at all. Looks like what I did is I kind of put everything on and then just kind of pressed it all down so it could all kind of, you know, stand up and, you know, kind of stay flat on the bottom. But that's a really sloppy Knuckles, so he's gonna go over here. And next is Team Chaotix. First off is SPO. I did show this guy in a Then and Now episode, and I think I praised him in that episode, and I'm actually gonna praise him again because I actually do like this SPO, even though he's, you know, really old. You know, he's actually not too bad, and I can tell that there was a certain sense of genuinely trying. But his shoes are wrong. Now we're gonna start, you know, picking out all the little detail inaccuracies. His tail is missing. He does not have the spines or the scales on the back of his back, but his horn is in the right place. I remember I used to think that SPO's horn was like his nose, so I used to like make his horn all the way down where like a nose would be. So it's good that it's in the right place. And his eyes, you know, they don't look that bad. I don't think this is a really terrible model. Next is Vector. So I don't know, you guys can be the judge on whether or not this model, quote, survived, but here he is, and I do actually have some of his parts. I'm not going to be able to kind of put all this back together because he's just missing way too much stuff, and a lot of it doesn't really fit back together. That's at least what he looked like, and I guess it's not that bad. Other than this Vector, the only other one that I can recall making is the one to the Knuckles Chaotix set, which was back in the late 2000s. So for this one being a first, especially way back then, it's not too terrible, to be honest. His arms kind of look like this, so, you know, just basic, like not the greatest. He had more of his headphones, which, you know, kind of went on his head, so I did pay attention to that detail, which I don't know how I could have overlooked it or decided to not include it. And here's kind of his shoe, again, just really generic, like not even accurate at all, and his other arm. That's Vector. Next is Team Dark. So Team Dark actually has all the members still around in some form. So here's Shadow, and originally this model wasn't sculpted to go along with the Sonic Heroes set. At the time, this Shadow was by far the best Shadow I had ever sculpted, and he was so good that I'm like, well, why am I gonna make another Shadow for the Sonic Heroes set? I should just make this Shadow part of that set. So that's kind of what I did. I adapted him into the set. His head is broken, and I have no plans to fix it, but let's take a look at his head while we're at it. He has 5 spikes, but there's evidence of a 6th one, so the only way I could have made this better is if I paid attention to which ones went up and which ones went down. But the face is a very standard kind of Sonic Shadow face for back in the day, just, you know, kind of basic, lacking, you know, the detail Shadow has on it. His body, there are a lot of good and a lot of bad here. The good is that I think he's kind of leaning over, but I think I did that to balance the head, and I believe at one point he may have stood up on his own. I'm not entirely sure, but I don't know, I like how the body is at least in proportion. In terms of scale, which, again, for this guy being sculpted, you know, separate from the set, he's actually pretty well in scale with these guys, so that's surprising. But back then I probably only had really one size model, and that was, you know, this size. Omega. And this is all that's left of Omega. And it doesn't look anything like the character. I always felt that it was really hard to get, you know, robots to look exactly as they should. Because, like, if you think about Sonic and Shadow and stuff, you know, I mean, they're like animals. But for, like, a robot, you have to make it look big and bulky. And you have to, you know, make it all shiny and metallic. And I don't know, I always had some type of trouble. Not the best looking Omega. And he wasn't in scale at all to Shadow. I mean, like, even with his legs, he probably came up to, like, half of Shadow's head. So, next is Rouge. This Rouge, actually, back in the day, it doesn't look too bad. But this, to my knowledge, is the only Rouge I've ever sculpted. In, like, my 10 plus years, I don't even know how many years it's been at this point. At least 10. So in my 10 plus years of sculpting, I've never sculpted another Rouge. Back then, anyway, what I would often do is, you know, I wasn't so selective as I am nowadays, where I would kind of just sculpt, you know, whoever and whatever. But I probably only did that because, aside from, you know, kind of experimenting with the characters and, you know, not really, like, them being so opinionated, back then I would just slop the clay together. So it's like, oh, I'll make a Rouge, sure, it'll take 5 minutes. Now, I don't believe this was actually part of the Sonic Heroes set, but he's in the same bag, so I'm just kind of going to throw him in there and pretend he was. And it's this Metal Sonic. I actually do have some other models to show you guys here besides just this. So this is really what's left of the Sonic Heroes set, and I'm just going to throw this guy in. And it's not a bad Metal Sonic. I'm going to say this was probably sculpted later than these guys, probably. But he suffers from all the same problems that I used to sculpt my Metal Sonics with. His ears are just points, and they're not actually like Sonic ears. I thought he had a mouth for some reason. I have no idea why I thought that. Probably because the bolts on the side of his muzzle here I thought was like a mouth or something. I think Metal Sonic does have spikes. Or I think he has a spike on like the back of his, on like his back or something, but I must have made that in the front and thought he had one in the front too. I don't know. And otherwise, it's just a really basic like little model. The spikes are all wrong. They're like so thin. And it looks like I didn't put 4 on there. There's kind of evidence that suggests there were 2 more, so I don't know what's going on with this Metal Sonic. So now, I'm going to show you guys a couple other models. Here's another SPO that I don't believe I've ever shown off before. So, here's an SPO that I know was sculpted later than that one. How do I know? I just get that feeling. But I'm going to say that this one is probably worse than, you know, the first one. The first one definitely looks a little bit more accurate, and like I said, it looks a little more natural. Not that I rushed on this one, or, you know, didn't really take my time, but there's just something about it that doesn't look as authentic as this one. But with that said, guys, that is the look at some older Sonic clay figures / the Sonic Heroes set, which pretty much doesn't even exist anymore. Like I said, I really thought I had more characters to this set than I actually do, because I remember some of them distinctly. Like, Big was really huge. I bought a 30 color pack sampler, and I took all the blue, mushed it all into one huge ball. I'm like, that's big. But thanks for watching, guys, this episode of the In-Depth series. I'm El Supersonic Q. Until the next video, Finn.